some of the results as announced by INEC. We begin from Bayelsa State, where INEC has announced that Diri of the PDP has emerged winner with 175,196 votes to defeat its closest rival of the APC, Timipre Silva, who is said to have polled 110,108 votes. Well, of course, the top two candidates are polled 285,304, and total valid votes is 287,554. If you go to Kogi State, the candidate of the APC, Usman Ododo, polled 446,237 votes, while his closest rival of the AZP, Muritala Ajaka, polled 259,052 votes, and PDP's Dino Melaye polled 46,362 votes out of a total valid vote of 782,289 votes. Of course, in Imo State, APC's Hope Uzodinma polled 540,308 votes, while Nathan Achonu of the Labour Party polled 64,081 votes, and PDP's Sam Anyanwu polled 71,503 votes. So that's how it is for the votes. But then, what about the lessons to be taken away from this exercise? Is there anything and the positive that we can take from these three elections in Bayelsa, Imo, and Kogi? Don't forget, elections in Ondo and Edo will happen next year, and the jostle for those two elections will begin sometimes in late January or mid of January. But let's speak to one of those who have been monitoring and observing these. You heard what Senator Dino Melaye said. Look, how can we improve our elections, and what are the issues that have come up from this election? Dr. Hussaini Abdul, he joins us. He's a right activist and a chair of the board of YIAGA Africa, one of the major civil society organizations who deployed observers to this election. He joins us virtually. Thank you so much, Dr. Abdul, for joining us tonight.
Thank you, Sean. Thanks for having me.
I appreciate it. Give us your own view about these three elections. Now, Bayelsa has been called, winner has been returned, and result declared. How do you think, we'll start with INEC. What is your assessment of INEC's outing this time around?
Yeah, I think we spend so much time assessing INEC, and we are very right to do so because that is the only constitutional body responsible for elections. And each time we go out on situations like this, we like to assess to see how well INEC performed. Comparatively speaking, and knowing where we are coming from the general elections, I actually think, or we think, that in terms of INEC's logistics, there have been significant improvement on these elections than all the previous ones that we've had in recent time. We think the electoral technology that we deployed all worked to a very significant extent. The beavers did work in the state that we monitored. In nothing less than 95% of the sample polling unit, we saw beavers did quite work. We see IRF also worked. So most of those institutional structures and processes, we've seen significant improvement, of course, in that regard. But again, there are other things that we struggled with. At least for the first time openly, we are seeing cases of pre-filled elections result, which was reported. Some of them swiftly dealt with. We also saw cases of beavers not working in a few polling units. For some of them, it was quickly addressed, technical glitch, quickly addressed, and they were back on streams. And then there were also a few polling units where the beavers were bypassed and where accreditations were done without following. But we also know what the law says in such situation, that it's as good that the election did not take place because accreditation is mandatorily done via beavers. So in terms of those operational logistics and some of those historical challenges that we've often struggled with INEC, there has been significant improvement this time around.
What about the politicians? What about their conduct? Because, like you said, the attention is usually on INEC, But, well, INEC is not the only factor involved in all of this. In all of those issues that have been raised, INEC, if accused of rigging the election, cannot rig election all by itself. INEC is not up against, in this contest, against any political party. It's up in the middle and caught in the web of all accusation back and forth by the politicians. How do you think that the politicians are able to conduct themselves this time around?
You know, I have always argued that INEC, the performance of INEC is a necessary condition for a credible elections, but it's not a sufficient condition for that. So it is necessary, but it's not sufficient. I think the attitude of our politicians has been a major issue, even in these particular elections. The intensity of the elections was totally unwarranted. But it has to do with the character of our politicians, the messages they were passing, the way they were driving the electioneering processes, the plans that they all have, either to outdo each other in the process of circumventing some of the laws that have been instituted to guide and ensure we have credible elections. So when somebody goes out, for instance, to snatch ballot boxes, it's a very clear thing. It's not a ballot box snatching of the old days where you snatch and stuff. But you don't, this one, if you snatch ballot paper, it's as good that you didn't have an elections in that place. Or somebody working hard to ensure that there was overvoting in the polling unit, because you are very sure that once there is overvoting, the result of that polling unit will be cancelled. The desperations to ensure that you have a pre-filled electoral result, even before the vote actually started, the whole use of violence to suppress vote and ensure people don't come out, or spreading rumor about relocation of polling units and people are not able to find where they're actually supposed to vote. Or like in some of the cases we found in Imo where there wasn't elections in those polling units, they happened to fall into our sample polling unit, but they were a result of those elections actually put on the IRF. It actually shows the level of desperation that our politicians have shown. And I think for me, it's a big worry for our democracy. We cannot run a democracy without Democrats. And the characters we are dealing with as politicians in this country have no iota of democratic values. They don't believe in it. They see it as a distraction. It is only suit them when they are actually in control. And this is a big problem if we don't address it. They are fundamental value issues. They are not things that you can simply legislate on and order. Yes, we can deal with the culture of impunity where people do things and get away with it. We try to deal with those things. But again, we need to work really hard in terms of imbibing the right values that drive democracy. Democracy is not simply about elections. It's not about elections. It's not just about having been in the parliament. It's a cultural thing. You have to develop that culture of democratic practice. So if you don't have it, you cannot have a democracy. And this is our biggest challenge.
Well, do you think that perhaps in some ways that politicians who are more desperate in these three off-cycle elections more than what we experienced in the 2023 general elections?
I think they were. I think there was extreme desperation for it because the election came with a lot of intensity. I think for those who haven't been observing elections, you may probably not notice the level of intensity in Bayelsa or in Imo and in Kogi. It was the whole thing in those states. It was like you are having another general elections. But I think what happened during the general elections, people's perceptions and understanding of Nigerian election has helped to calm things down in terms of saying, okay, this one will also come, it will also come and go. But the intensity was really, really very, very high. And a lot of them actually are historical. Bayelsa also has a history of strong, intensive elections. We knew what happened during the last elections and what the court interventions and how the party that won the elections actually has to leave you on the eve of the swearing in. You'll know what happened in Imo, and in those kind of system, you always like to prove a point. And the cost of proving a point, you tense up the polity And at the end of the day, you discourage people from coming out to vote because the way it was looking is like, oh, it's going to be a very violent elections. It's going to be massive vote suppression, and people are discouraged from coming out to vote.
So if you look at this, in all of it, I mean, I really would have loved to delve into the area of security and maybe an appraiser, just a brief one, of the performance of the security agencies in what, I mean, those who thought that Kogi State would be a theater of war, considering what we have seen in the past. But how do you also appraise the security in terms of how they are able to hold things down and how they are able to curtail what could have been an excessive actions by politicians or thugs?
Yeah, I think the security agencies did quite well. For some of us who observed this thing in some of our pre-elections report and analysis did shows the potential and possibility of violence, particularly in the state like Kogi, where the last elections, the one before this particular one, was also quite intense, quite difficult, and there were a lot of violence. But I think the police institution acted decisively. Where they need to move a commissioner of police, they did move such thing and replace them. Where they were reported, they acted decisively. They made some considerable arrests, even in Kogi. In almost all the states, arrests were made. We hope those people arrested will be prosecuted, so that at least we can begin to send a lesson or a message that we can't tolerate this culture of impunity. So I think, in our own assessment, there have been significant improvement in terms of the security response to the situation, and their role actually played a very, very strategic role in ensuring that we're able to calm things down in some of the states. In
wrapping this up, Dr. Abdul, just briefly, if you can tell us, if there is one positive to take out of these three all-cycle elections, for INEC especially, and for Nigerians, what would that be?
I think it's improved logistics. INEC has improved logistically. We also saw the election technology worked, and that's very encouraging. We hope they can sustain it.
Interesting. I hope so too. But thank you so much indeed, Dr. Hussaini Abdul, a right activist and the chair of the board of YIAGA Africa, those who send out observers for this election to monitor what has been going on. Of course, we get a lot of reactions to these elections, and hoping that INEC might be able to at some point also get their views on how things went and the next line of action. Thank you so much indeed, Dr. Abdul, for your time.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks for having me.